I don't always relocate. But when I do, I make sure it's not next to a nuclear reactor.
It started with President Nixon's Watergate, which paved the path for a laundry list of other Gate scandals: Whitewatergate, Irangate, football's Deflategate, and so on. But this gate is different. It is the most dangerous and scandalous gate ever concocted. It's called NukeGate. And it involves nuclear negligence. The NukeGate cover-up is one of the most dangerous scandals ever concocted. Think a scandal of this proportion can't happen in today's world? Think again. Fasten your seatbelt, you're about to witness indisputable facts that will jolt your very faith in corporate and governmental integrity and corruption. Let's see how the government has wagered away our safety and security for industrial favors and profits. Some aspects of the scandal you are about to witness apply to the nuclear industry and other nations as well.
Warning. This video presents images and content that may be disturbing to some viewers and children. Viewer discretion is advised.
The NukeGate scandal has been so carefully whitewashed and covered up that 98% of the American public is unaware of what the government, aligned with entrenched corporate interests, has just pulled off. All while making it look legitimate to the innocent public, which will ultimately bear the risks. We will now examine the facts hidden deep beneath this whitewash, and you can decide for yourself. U.S. nuclear plants were originally permitted to operate for a period of 40 years. More recently, these plants were approaching their 40-year licensing limit. They would all be forced to close unless their operating licenses were renewed. The U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission, NRC, initiated a national relicensing program, technically referred to as license renewal, to extend the operational period of this fleet, consisting of 100 aging, antiquated nuclear plants from 40 years to 60 years. By law, the NRC was required to prepare an environmental impact statement, EIS, for each of these extended licenses. The purpose of these EISs is to rigorously assess impacts and increased risk that these plants would pose over an additional 20-year operating period. So far, so good. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission, NRC, began preparing environmental impact statements, EISs, to renew the license for each and every one of the 100 nuclear plants. On the surface, it had the appearance of an agency complying to the fullest extent of the law. But as you are about to see, the entire process was a sham. It was a dog and pony show, orchestrated to look as harmless as possible, so as not to alarm the public or stoke controversy. Had the NRC explained the true facts and actual threats this program posed, public outrage might have stopped the entire program. Instead, NRC prepared EISs that hid the facts and concealed the true dangers. To understand how the nuclear industry pulled this off, all one has to do, so to speak, is look under the hood. This entire process was a whitewash. Why? Because, in each and every case, the 100 relicensing EISs reached the ridiculous and absurd finding that the risk of a major nuclear accident, like a full-scale meltdown, is, quote, small. So small, that NRC claimed it could exempt the assessment of such impacts from scientific analysis and public scrutiny. Such a ridiculous finding is so bogus, it stretches scientific imagination and government integrity to its limits. How could this even be possible? To understand the actual cover-up, we need to first understand the NRC's shady past. Let's examine the secretive government culture and bureaucracy that may explain such a preposterous deception. We begin with the dangerous Project Chariot, the first in a long culture of deceptive and perilous nuclear projects. A perilous problem-plagued past. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission's predecessor was the Atomic Energy Commission, or AEC. Both the NRC and AEC have a long history of dubious projects. We begin with Project Chariot. The year was 1958. NRC's predecessor, the AEC, declared its intent to blast an artificial harbor along the Alaskan coast. The original project is shown on this project map. But it wasn't the mere idea of blasting a harbor that lit the public and congressional fuse. It was how they planned to do it. The very idea raised the hair on the back of people's necks. The AEC planned to blast the harbor using nuclear bombs. We kid you not. The plan involved using 5 large nuclear detonations equal to an incredible 3 million tons of TNT. They hoped to make it a routine construction practice around the world. Public outcry neared hysterical levels. But like an arrogant bureaucracy, the AEC dug its heels into the ground, thumbing its nose at the alarmed public. Sensing mounting pressure, Congress entered the act. Congress ordered AEC to prepare an environmental report to study the environmental calamity that would result from using nuclear bombs to carve out a harbor. The completed environmental report soundly rebuked AEC's Project Chariot proposal, as a quote, outrageous project. One of the senior scientists was so disturbed he stated,
"This is one of most ill-thought-out and potentially dangerous proposals I have ever read."
Oh shit!
Reluctantly, AEC was forced to cancel Project Chariot. But it had established the arrogant mindset, which its successor, the NRC, would inherit. But this atrocious story is just beginning. This environmental report they were required to prepare served as the blueprint for the modern EIS requirement that Congress would enact a few years later.
The famous Calvert Cliffs lawsuit.
On the heels of the Project Chariot fiasco, AEC found itself in yet another watershed event. The EIS requirement had just been enacted by Congress. This time, the agency refused to consider the impacts presented in an EIS for another nuclear project. But this time, AEC snubbed its nose, not just to the public, but to Congress and the courts as well. AEC was sued for ignoring its EIS mandate and suffered a humiliating loss in the precedent-setting case, the now infamous Calvert Cliffs lawsuit. Ironically, AEC's dismissive arrogance fueled the course of the environmental movement that would follow in its wake.
Baloney.
The judge strongly rebuked AEC for its refusal to comply with its EIS responsibilities. He wrote that the AEC had, and we quote, a crabbed interpretation of NEPA and that AEC's interpretation, and we quote, makes a mockery of the act. He went on to write, and we quote,
"It seems an unfortunate affliction of large organizations to resist new procedures and to envision massive roadblocks to their adoption."
Ironically, in snubbing its nose at the EIS requirement, AEC effectively did more to solidify the EIS mandate than any other lawsuit that would follow. The EIS mandate was now firmly established as the law of the land. Unfortunately, misery loves company. NRC is continuing the same arrogant and dismissive culture as its predecessor, the AEC. Let's examine how NRC has again used a smokescreen to hide and obscure inconvenient facts, just as they attempted to do with Project Chariot and in the Calvert Cliffs lawsuit. Welcome to NukeGate, NRC's deceptive licensing program. Having witnessed what the nuclear industry tried to get away with in the past, we will now turn our attention to the ominous cover-up that NRC just pulled off. Recall that NRC graciously complied with the nuclear industry's wishes and established a national program to extend the operating licenses of the entire fleet of 100 reactors by 20 years. According to NRC's website, Mr. Brian Holian was placed in charge of this program. Mr. Pham oversaw and approved these relicensing EISs. Lies, bigger lies, and damn big nuclear lies. A typical NRC relicensing EIS runs 150,000 words or more in length. The bulk of the EIS assessment should be focused on assessing major impacts such as cataclysmic accidents. But was that done? No. Recall that NRC concluded that the risk of a major accident, such as a full-scale meltdown, was classified as small. Every one of their EISs contained only this simple 30-word dismissal. We quote:
The probability-weighted consequences of atmospheric releases, fallout onto open bodies of water, releases to groundwater, and societal and economic impacts from severe accidents are small for all plants.
That's it. Not 30,000, 20,000, or even a scant 10,000 words devoted to assessing the cataclysmic impacts of a major nuclear accident. True, the EISs devoted a chapter to the so-called subject of nuclear accidents. But it's a cover-up, pure and simple. The actual assessment of nuclear accidents was limited to this single 30-word statement, essentially assuring us that we have nothing to worry about. The rest of the chapter is a smokescreen, intentionally avoiding any and all discussion of the actual consequences of an accident.
Oh my God.
The risk of a catastrophic accident is small? Who are they kidding?
NRC simply swept the entire issue under the rug. If you're in disbelief, simply consult Chapter 5 in any one of NRC's relicensing EISs and see for yourself. But it gets worse. Their EISs cunningly hid many other significant issues, which are too numerous to describe in this video. Sound a bit like Project Chariot or the Calvert Cliffs EIS? At the time these EISs were being prepared, few were paying close attention to what NRC was pulling off. Even fewer saw through their smokescreen. Thus, there was little awareness, controversy, or outcry. This simple dismissal statement is precisely what the nuclear industry and its lobbyists wanted. Nuclear power corporations now had permission, they long coveted, to continue operating, thereby maximizing profits at the expense of public safety and security.
What the hell?
Nothing to seriously worry about? Impossible nuclear accidents? Apparently, someone in their licensing department forgot about past apocalyptic nightmares, which have included everything from cataclysmic fires, to explosions, to full-scale meltdowns, at plants such as 3 Mile Island, Chernobyl, Fukushima, and nearly 100 near misses in the US alone. No reasonable scientist or member of the public believes such cockamamie safety denials.
Oh shit.
How stupid do they think we are?
I think ancient astronauts wrote NRC's denial.
As anyone in the public knows, a catastrophic nuclear accident, such as a plant fire or meltdown, can result in near-apocalyptic effects. By law, an EIS is required to fully and rigorously evaluate impacts, threats, and alternatives for mitigating impacts like accidents. Let's examine how well NRC did in fulfilling their EIS and public reporting responsibilities.
Dinner is served.
Not a single word devoted to the assessment of deaths. No mention of radiation poisoning, how many would be poisoned, or how many would die. Not a single word devoted to resulting cancers. Not a single thought given to radiation-induced birth defects. No analysis of permanent radioactively contaminated zones. No assessment of radioactively contaminated species and habitats. Not a mention of agricultural contamination or how it might enter the food chain. No consideration of socio-economic ramifications such as temporary or even permanent evacuation of entire towns, cities, or counties, or lost homes, jobs, schools, or businesses. Not a single word given to mass panic or hysteria that would follow in the wake. No mention of psychological trauma, including PTSD.
No one knows how many would be injured, or even die, because NRC completely avoided the analysis of nuclear accidents, by simply denying there is any significant risk to worry about. A complete, fictitious, whitewash. Check the facts for yourself. Contact the NRC and ask them for assistance in obtaining the EISs so you can read this for yourself. NRC's public document room phone number is 1-800-397-4209. NRC's safety and security concern phone number is 1-800-695-7403. Ask them how they can justify such nuclear nonsense.
Come on, man.
To the left is the cover page for one of NRC's relicensing EISs. This one was for the Vogtle nuclear power plant. To the right is an abbreviated copy of a public notice, in this case for the issuance of the Kewaunee nuclear plant relicensing EIS. It was approved and signed by Mr. Pham. Carefully examine the second paragraph of this abbreviated notice, and we quote:
The staff has determined that the adverse impacts of license renewal for KPS, Kewaunee Nuclear Plant, are not great enough to deny the option of license renewal for energy planning decision makers.
This paragraph essentially declares that the relicensed plant poses no serious threat to society. But how does NRC know this for sure? After all, they aborted the actual assessment of catastrophic nuclear accidents. Thus, NRC lacks a scientific basis for making such a declaration. NRC's smokescreen has effectively hidden the truth from us, just as they attempted to do in the case of the Calvert Cliffs EIS. And this was the case for each and every one of the 100 renewed licenses.
Damn you!
Oh my.
Who do they think they're fooling? Even my bowling team knows better.
True. Not a single one of the nation's 100 nuclear reactors had their license renewal applications denied. Why? Because NRC's hidden agenda is to facilitate the nuclear industry. And they needed to do this quietly, under the radar screen, so as not to alarm the public. Had NRC rigorously examined impacts of an accident, as required under law, they would have scared the public and stirred the hornet's nest. So rather than rigorously examine safety issues, they simply aborted the entire assessment with a 30-word denial. This is the essence of NukeGate. NRC simply rubber-stamped all of their 100 extended nuclear reactor licenses. Even NRC admits its EIS process was a sham. Want proof that NRC's license renewal process was a farce at best, and a complete cover-up at worst? Here is proof positive. By law, the EIS process must provide a fair and objective assessment. As witnessed earlier in the section on the Calvert Cliffs lawsuit, it is blatantly illegal to make a final decision before the EIS process has been completed. The NRC was required, by law, to review the EIS analysis and weigh the potential impacts before making a decision to grant a renewed operating license. But was this done? No. In direct violation of the law, even NRC's own staff openly and publicly admitted that the NRC made up their mind, long before the EIS had even been completed. Consider what one of Mr. Pham's own EIS project managers, Ms. Bennett Brady, admitted at a public EIS meeting. She was asked by a member of the press about the alternative of taking no action, not granting the extended license, effectively shutting down the Cooper nuclear reactor. She, candidly and publicly admitted, and we quote, that option wasn't even considered because of the important role which Cooper Nuclear Station plays in getting energy. In other words, she candidly and publicly admitted that NRC had already made its decision to renew that operating license long before the EIS had even been completed. This proves that NRC's entire EIS process was a rubber-stamped, fake process, and a sheer waste of taxpayer money. A dog and pony show. not a single one of the 100 nuclear reactor license applications were denied. Why? Because NRC's hidden agenda is to facilitate the nuclear industry. And they needed to do this quietly, under the radar screen, so as not to alarm the public. Had NRC rigorously examined impacts of an accident, as required under law, they would have scared the public and stirred the hornet's nest. So rather than rigorously examine safety issues, they simply aborted the entire assessment with a 30-word denial. This is the essence of NukeGate. Get ready, because you're not going to believe what's coming around the corner. NukeGate 2.0? NRC recently started its new venture, having the elusive-sounding title, Subsequent License Renewal or SLR. Sounds rather innocuous, doesn't it? Yes indeed, having just completed its deceptive program of extending the operating period from 40 to 60 years, NRC is now pursuing a subsequent program to extend licenses of these antiquated death traps from 60 to a full 80 years. It's quietly cruising along at this very moment. Simply Google, Subsequent License Renewal, or look it up on NRC's website. Yet, just as before, few in the public have ever even heard about it. NRC plans to start preparing the new licenses and EISs in the near future. And guess who's been placed in charge of this new SLR program? Mr. Pham, the manager who supervised NRC's infamous 30-word statement, declaring that nuclear reactors pose no serious risk to society, and thus NRC did not need to perform a scientific assessment of major nuclear accidents, leaving the scientific community and public in the dark. Are we heading into a NukeGate 2.0?
What?
I hate being lied to.
The EIS regulations and courts have ordered preparation of a programmatic EIS, PEIS, for programs having national implications. A purpose of a PEIS is to assess an entire national program, at its early decision-making phase, to determine if it is
even a wise idea. Allow the public to provide input into shaping the course of the program. And to determine the optimum path forward, which in this case, might actually involve alternatives such as shutting the entire nuclear fleet down, and instead shifting resources to a national program such as renewable energy.
For the first time, they will be forced to justify the risk this program poses to the nation as a whole. NRC simply avoided preparing a programmatic EIS for its first relicensing program, and got away with it, because no one challenged them. Don't let them get away with it a second time around. The time to act is now. Demand that they begin preparation of a PEIS immediately. And don't believe any cockamamie denial that they don't need to prepare one. They are legally obligated to prepare a programmatic EIS and engage public input. If they refuse to immediately begin preparing a programmatic EIS, you the public, states, and environmental organizations can file a lawsuit, forcing them. Congress can also direct them to prepare a PEIS. For more information on the programmatic EIS requirement, see the NEPA Implementing Regulations, 40 Code of Federal Regulations, Sections 1502.4b, 1500.4i, and 1502.1.
Yes!
How's that for a government industrial cover-up? That's why it's called NukeGate, the most dangerous gate ever perpetrated on the public. Check the facts for yourself. Will NRC make the same deceitful claims in their new 80-year subsequent license renewal program, NukeGate 2.0? For more information, contact organizations such as
your congressman or senatorial offices, Union of Concerned Scientists, Physicians for Social Responsibility, and Friends of the Earth. Demand transparency and accountability. Goodbye, my friends, and stay safe.
Now's the time to avoid NukeGate 2.0. Get your local reactor spayed or neutered, now.